Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody in between, welcome to another episode of the Chaps Chat Cats. My name is Jake, and I'm joined by Johnny. We're flying one chap short here on the Hoops Crew Media Network tonight. Johnny, how are you?
Well, pretty good. Pretty good. Can't complain. How about yourself? On holiday, so yeah, really can't complain.
That's right. Yeah, you're about to leave our shores for a lovely holiday, so you'll be enjoying that. So it's kind of nice.
Oh,
You and I
yes.
get a one-on-one show tonight.
We do.
Sambo and I'll pilot the next two as a two-man crew. And on tonight's show, Johnny, a bit of a rugged one to discuss. We're going to talk all about the Cats v
Yes.
Bulldogs round 19 recap. Ruh-roh. So we'll
boy.
get into all of
Oh boy, here we go.
That's right. Or we'll get into all of the action from that one for you. Then we're going to duck behind the Hoops Crew Patreon curtain. We're going to do a little bit of Patreon question time. We've been getting our Patreon subscribers to shoot through topics and questions that they want us to talk about in the extended part of the show. There's some good conversation starters there tonight, Johnny. And so, yeah, if you want to join us for that part of the show. Yeah, it was. Last time it was all about team selection and who might be, droppable, undroppable. It led to a really nice half-hour conversation, which was we really enjoyed. So if you want to jump in, go over to the Hoops Crew on Patreon. You can start a 7-day free trial, get access to extended versions of our podcast, the Wednesday news wrap with Ben and myself, VFL men's and women's coverage, scratching post episodes with Paul, as well as other bits and pieces from time to time as well. That is the Hoops Crew Patreon. Start your free trial. Before we jump into the public show, though, Johnny, we've got to thank another entity here, and that is the Hoops Crew Media Network sponsor, Valhalla Brewing. If you find yourself in the CBD, make sure you get along to the tap room. If you're out in North Geelong, it is the Brew Hall. We thank Valhalla Brewing for sponsoring, being the media network sponsor of the Hoops Crew. Support the Brew Hall that supports the pod. Johnny, let's jump into it. I'm going to give us a very quick recap of the action, then going to handball to you for all of your thoughts as the Cats fall to the Dogs in a disappointing mudfest of a game, and this is how it unfolded. We had the Cats starting pretty slowly. It has to be said, Johnny. It has to be said. It was not an ideal start from Geelong in this game. The Dogs definitely started the better of the two sides. As I fixed the layup in real time. Colin, what are we doing, Colin? I have to ask, Colin, what's going on here? Producer Colin, he's been stuffing a few things up this week. We might need to put Colin on a bit of a break again, I think, Johnny. But this game unfolded thusly. The Dogs got the first goal on the board after 6 minutes via the boot of Jamara Ugle-Hagan. Took a long time before there was another major on the board. That one was kicked too by the Dogs after 23 minutes. Sam Darcy. They added a third goal early in the second quarter, and on a rain-soaked, muddy ground, it was beginning to look very dire for the Cats, with the Dogs leading 21-2. They had chances to extend it further. Sam Darcy kicked it behind. There was a rush behind. The Cats were under siege. Then they got one back via the boot of Tyson Stengel. They got another one back via the boot of Ollie Henry midway through the third term. They'd reduced the margin, Geelong, back that sort of less than 2 goals sort of territory. But then the Dogs closed out the first half very strongly. They had a behind to Jamara again, a goal to Adam Treloar. The Cats had a behind to Mark Blixarves. Then there was a flurry of behinds to round out the first half to the Dogs. Bailey Dale, Tom Liberatore, a rushed behind. and Lockie McNeil, all chances to extend the lead, but they turned for the Sheds at the half, up 4-10-34 to Geelong's 2-3-15. The Cats, 2 on the board early in the second quarter after the second half after the Dogs missed early chances to Vandermeer and Bontempelli. It was Patrick Dangerfield and Tom Stewart, the Bash Bros, in the middle, going bang, bang after 5 minutes to reduce the margin again to that 10 points. The Dogs had a response through Adam Treloar. The Cats had a response via Brad Close. And it seemed like maybe the Cats might just start charging. Unfortunately, from there, the Dogs really did take a bit of control. They had 2 goals in a row to Aaron Norton and Cody Waitman. The Cats got one back via Ollie Dempsey. The Dogs responded through Ed Richards. The Cats kept it just a bit interesting, going in at the final change with a Jeremy Cameron goal after 31 minutes. But the last quarter left a particularly sour taste, really, in the mouths of Cats fans. Johnny, it was Aaron Norton after 5 minutes who fired one through to the Dogs to put it out beyond 20 points. It was Jamara adding another after 15 minutes, another after 18 minutes, another after 19 minutes and 45 seconds before Adam Treloar capped off the goal scoring for the evening with a major on 23 and a half minutes. And that was the last goal scored for the game as the Bulldogs ran out. Oh, boy. Big winners down at Kardinia Park. They get the job done 13-17, 95 to 7-6, 48. It was Jamara Ugle-Hagan, 4 goals, 1. Treloar, 3 straight. Ed Richards, 2 goals, 1. Treloar, 31 touches. Richards, 29 touches. Bontempelli, 27. For the Cats, single goal kickers, all. Stewart, 1. Stengel, 1. Ollie Henry, 1. Tom Stewart led the way with 26 touches. Max Holmes, 23. And Mitch Duncan, 22. But go to you now, Johnny, with all that sort of fresh in our memories. What were your thoughts in this disappointing matchup?
Yeah, disappointing. Very, very disappointing, especially that last quarter. But I sort of had a bit of worry when Tom Atkins was such a late out. And then they also had Neil out as well. I thought at the start, it was like, oh, yeah, wet weather. It's going to be raining. Fair enough decision to leave Neil out. It may not be ideal for the Tools, but tell you what, the Dogs Tools proved that wrong pretty quickly, the way they're able to perform. So, as you said during the night through text, it was just a bad night for the whole team, including coaches and the selection team and the players. Like nothing really went according to plan at all. It was just a really dismal and heartbreaking loss in the end, really. The usual suspects showed their true skills. Patrick Dangerfield, Thomas Stewart, Manor really stood up in times. Holmes as well. Cameron, could have done a bit better, but still fought hard. And then there was a few players that didn't really prove too much on the night that, it could be close to one of the last games this year playing for the Hoops. So it's going to be an interesting selection this week coming against North Melbourne, who pushed the Blues. So it's not going to be a walk in the park on next weekend. So the Cats have got to move on from this and kick into gear pretty quickly. But in terms of the Dogs game, yeah, that was quite disappointing. And it was one year where the Dogs were desperate for a win. They needed to win this to keep their final hopes in with a shot. And the Cats, can afford to lose one. Not that you go into the game going, "Oh, we can afford to lose this," so it doesn't matter. It still matters in terms of how you lose. And I thought they fought hard throughout the game, and then that's just that last quarter. That last quarter was probably one where it was just like, yeah, that was a really disappointing way to end the game. Not really put much fight in towards the end. It felt like they had just gone, well, we're not going to win this. We won't try as hard. Not that they weren't trying, but yeah, it just felt like they eased off the gas a bit in that last quarter and let the Dogs run over us a bit too easily. And yeah, it was just one of those games that nothing went the Cats' way in all aspects of the game. The bounce of the ball wasn't going our way. The way the players were attacking wasn't ferocious enough. I thought. I thought they were backing off and letting the Dogs get the ball a bit too much. Just like I thought the Dogs attack, their eagerness to get the ball first, to use it clean and effectively was just better than the Cats. It was just one of those games where the Cats were outplayed in most areas of the game. So well done to the Dogs. Cats, a lot of things to work on, but it's one of those things that it's not insurmountable. It's not one of those where we need to panic and freak out. It was just a bad game, and it happens. It's happened a few times this year. It's going to happen a few more times. We've still got pretty young midfield still learning how to play the game. Young players coming through, new players to the system, still learning how the cat system works. And it is what it is. I'm not going to lose. I didn't lose any sleep over it. I didn't lose any anger. I didn't really get too angry or annoyed. It was just more of that, disappointing feeling of going.
Don't spend any time on it, because in the meantime, every 3 months, a person is torn to pieces by a crocodile in North Queensland.
Exactly. I'm not going to spend any more time on it. We're going to spend the next 40 odd minutes talking about it, and then we're going to be over it. We're moving on to next week, looking at the brighter future, because there's still a chance. We're a game off second still. It's not the end of the world. It's not freak out stations. It's just take a step back and go, that was bad. Review it. The team review it. As fans, I don't think there's any point dwelling on it too much. Let's just move on and think of greater and better things that the Cats can do.
Yeah, it's interesting all that, like the response to wins, the response to losses. I put up a tweet, and I've probably just got to stop tweeting about it. It is, I guess, what it is. That sometimes the reactions are just over the top. Like my tweet was, Cats fans after Geelong have 3 great wins. We're so back. And then Cats fans after Geelong has one, crappy loss. We're nothing and no one, and sack Chris Scott. And I sort of said, we're one of the least justifiably whiplash fan bases in the comp.
Mhm.
Like, and someone said, you're not as bad as Port. And I said, I understand why Port fans get angry, because they haven't gotten over the hump, since 2004. There are Port fans who have born and grown up and become adults that have never experienced winning a flag, have never experienced maybe even going to a grand final outside of, 2007. And most people want to forget that one. So I get why those fan bases get so up and down and caught up in the thing. As Cats fans, sometimes, and look, everyone, it is each to their own. And I actually do want to start this show tonight, Johnny, almost divided into 2 halves. Talk about the things that we think went wrong. And then in the second half of the show, talk about some of the bright spots and things we thought went right, because I think there were still not just like some decent storylines, but some really positive things to come out of this game. Sean Manor comes to mind as like a massive story for me the last few weeks since he came back in. And this performance really feels like, the peak of it so far. But I just sometimes wish that we as Geelong fans would act like we've been there before.
Mm.
Like, we have been up the top for so long. We've had so many wins. And I'm not saying that the team should be complacent and go, let's rest on our laurels. Let's accept, whatever will be, will be. I'm just saying, as fans, we've seen it all. We've seen way worse than this. We've seen way better than this. We have seen the full gamut. We've seen grand final floggings. We've seen disappointing upset losses in grand finals. We've seen everything in between. Let's just maybe take a breather and remember, we, more than basically any other club in the comp, have been there and done that in the 21st century. So just sometimes just go, tip your hat. The other team played exceptionally well. We were pretty bad, and there's some areas we're going to get into now, Johnny, about why. But just act like we've been there. It's okay. It's a loss. We've just had 3 great wins that rectified our slide. So honestly, if you said the month ahead, you're going to go Essendon, Hawthorn, Collingwood, And the Dogs, all teams that I think, before this month, there or thereabouts competing for finals, and we go 3-1, I'd have bitten your hand off, John. You'd have had no
Oh,
hand
definitely.
left if you'd offered me that. So, but let's get into it, John. And as I said, first half, we'll talk about some things we thought went wrong, and then maybe the
Yep.
Cats got wrong, and then we'll pivot to talk about the sort of the positive, the silver lining, maybe. First, I
do it.
want to just set you up here. We talked about, the fight. Was it there? Was it not there in the last quarter? Here is some stats for you in the game. The Dogs had 60 more disposals than the Cats, 380 to 320. The clearances, they won them. The hitouts, 49 to 44, the Dogs' way. So fairly even there. The clearances, 46 apiece, split straight down the middle. The Dogs won the center clearances by 5. We won the stoppage clearances by 5. Contested possessions, 142 for the Cats. That's 7 more than our season average, but you'd expect that in the rain. The Dogs,
Yep.
159. Pretty comfortably won that.
Pretty close. Yep.
Here's the ones. We laid 78 tackles to their 86. Pretty decent. Let me give you the stats that were, in my mind, the ones that show the lopsidedness and why I think the last quarter makes some sense. The Dogs, brought great pressure, 86 tackles
Yep.
to 78. The marks, 92 to 72. Turnovers, they had 76. We had 90 turnovers. Inside 50s, they had 61 inside 50s to our 39. And the most telling stat of all, Johnny, 30 scoring shots to 13. The Cats really, I know we can focus on the last quarter. They should have buried us by
Oh,
halftime,
absolutely. Yeah.
and they didn't.
And the other stats that also shout out big, big warning signs throughout the game were ones that I thought was the Cats weren't utilising well enough and good enough were the handballs. Cats had 91 handballs. Bulldogs had 138, which in the wet weather is a smart way to go about it, using the hands instead of the feet. And in uncontested possessions, 215 for the Dogs, 146 to the Cats. So, combined handballs, contested possessions, and then your scoring shots, your turnovers, your inside 50 work, and it just goes, that team played the weather better. The Dogs went in and they played the conditions, and unfortunately, the Cats just didn't really. At the end of the day, the Cats did not play the conditions as well as the Dogs did. Didn't adapt quick enough, and when they did, they looked good. Like when the Cats did start playing the way they wanted to and playing the conditions, they looked really good. They were beating the Dogs and playing a game that was, I want to say, better than Dogs, but was matching what the Dogs were able to do, and we were getting more inside 50s. We're getting more inside our forward half. But unfortunately, there was only like maybe 10, 20, maybe even half an hour of when the Cats were playing that football. The rest of the game, the Dogs were able to play the way they wanted to. So, and as I said, the handballs, that is a massive difference in handballs. And as I said, it's a smart way to play the football. When it's wet, it's slippery underfoot. It's going to be hard to mark. You surround the ball and you handball it a lot and get out of trouble. And that's what the Dogs did, and they did it really well. And Cats are going to have to look back and go, we made many wrong decisions and didn't do the job well enough. But still, me and Sam talking about it after the game, we're both like missing Tom Atkins, like having him out, late out, I think really hurt the Cats. And it shows what Tom Atkins can bring to this team when he's in the side and why he's undroppable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's like a real heart and soul player for the Cats. And like, if you want to quantify that in what he actually does on the field more than just sort of he's a heart and soul player, it's his consistency. He's the same player every week. and he might not win 31 touches, but he's probably going to give you like 30, 35, somewhere in that reach, pressure acts. He's going to try and bring a lot of tackles. He's going to be a tough, opponent to line up on at a stoppage. He's done some underrated work this year. I thought it was a good opportunity, I guess, for us as fans to see what the team looks like without him. And it made those of us who love him miss him even more. And I think it provided an opportunity for the Atkins skeptics maybe to see what the team looks like when he's not around. We had great physical presence, I think, in Danger and Stewie and Sean Manor, but like
just needed that one extra.
It's just like another presence. And if anything, it was the fact that the people who stepped into the roles really didn't do enough. And I know I'm not trying to be overly critical, but the reality is that players who are brought in and given a bit of an opportunity this week, they've not really taken the opportunity. I like you said, you don't want to write anyone off after one game, but I think you would be skeptical now as to whether there's one or two cats as to whether they are cats in 2025, and that might be harsh, and who knows what happens from here on out. You just never know what can happen with players. But I just wanted to build on what you were saying about the uncontested possession and the handballs. So I'll just bring some stats up here on the screen for those watching along at home. Sorry, I'm at the controls here now, not Colin. I've taken over and I've stuffed it up.
Colin should have had all this set up here, though.
I know. I'm adapting on the fly, John. This is what I wanted to just show was looking at the top 20.
Not many cats
for
there.
Uncontested possession. Top 20 for uncontested possessions. 14 Bulldogs, 6 cats in the top 20 on the ground for uncontested. But I think this comes from the other side of the coin. The contested possessions. There were let me just make sure I've got this right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of the top 20. Perhaps 8 of the top 20. I'm just trying to count off the top of my head. But 8 of the top 20 on the ground for contested possessions were Geelong players. 12 of the top 20 were Dogs players. And there's a big drop-off for the Cats after their top 5. It goes Bontempelli with 19, Richards with 14. Then it's 5 Cats. Dangerfield, Stewart, Manor, Guthrie, and De Koning. Then it's 3 Dogs, 6 Dogs, a couple of Cats, and a Bulldog to round it out. There was a big drop-off for Geelong after their sort of top 5 guys, top 6 guys. And I think it was the Dogs' ability to win more contested ball, to work it clear of the contest via their quick handball that allowed them to create the space and uncontested footy. I want to ask you here, do you think we got some of our pressuring wrong? I thought there were a few instances where we weren't pressuring as efficiently as we would have liked. We had, like, say, 4 cats going to almost one ball carrier and they pop a hand pass out and away they go. Like, sometimes, as we talk about, there was effort, but the efficiency of how we were pressuring as a team probably wasn't there. Is that a fair comment, do you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely fair. And there was even moments where they just sort of like stood there waiting for the Dogs players to come and get it, and they were going to add the pressure. And then the Dogs player was too quick. They just got it and ran away with it. And by the times the Cats reacted, it was too late. And then, as you said, there was those times where there was 3 or 4 Cats players pressuring the one Bulldogs, and then it's just that handball out. And also the Dogs surrounding the outside. They had one or 2 players go for the ball, and then they had 3 players on the outside waiting for a handball. And then they had players running past, waiting for that handball. And they were just, it was a really good setup against a bit of a rugged, not so well set up sort of It could have also been the new players coming in not knowing the system as well as they could or should know. Also, could be that Tom Stewart was playing defence for most of the game, which was crazy because when he was in the middle, looking so much better. It was those pressure moments. As you said, the effort was there. It was just ill-directed effort, or the effort to get to the contest was there, but then they just didn't apply the pressure at the right time. Or we're right about this other dog that was running off, and they'll chase him, and then the Bulldogs player would run opposite direction and find a player on the outside. So yeah, it was just one of those nights where, as I said, it was a really poor night. I don't think many players after that game would go, "Yeah, we played our best." Even Tom
Mm.
Stewart, Dangerfield, Holmes, they wouldn't be putting up their hands saying they played their best games and put the best foot forward. And it's going to happen. Players
Yeah.
have mares of a game, and when everyone has a bad game, that it's not going to end well. Especially when the opposition they need a victory. They've had a really good victory against a good opponent in the Blues the week previous. They've been hearing online and throughout the media that their season's done and dusted, that they can't beat this team, they can't beat the next 4 teams. It's just, they're going to have a bit of a fire in their belly and want to prove everyone wrong, and that's what happened. They were there for the fight. They were up for the tough weather, for the muddy ground, everything, and Cats weren't.
It cracks me up. Like there was actually, and I know we want to keep it Cats focused, but I've been saying all year I think the Dogs are a much better team than their record at times suggests. I think they're one of the
Definitely.
more talented lists in the comp. And it just cracked me up after all this talk during the year of like, oh, they should get rid of Bevo. There's something wrong with the Dogs, blah, blah, blah. That, in the last quarter, they're talking about, I don't know which commentator it was saying, I think it's going to be a rematch of the 2016 grand final. Swans and Dogs, I'm calling it. Like, mate, I'm pretty sure I had them picked to finish third at the start of the year. Like, this is a talented team. Like, anyone who was
Definitely.
thinking we were just going to waltz in and blow them away by 60 points, I don't think maybe has looked closely enough at what the Dogs are this year. They're extremely inconsistent, very dangerous team. And if they put it together, they can absolutely storm up the ladder. Their best footy is very good.
And we saw
Now,
it.
I don't want to. I don't want to like dive into this too much. And in fact, we're gonna leave this topic for the Patreon because one of our Patreon
That's fair.
questions,
Yeah.
was about
Positive
selection
positives time?
and did we get? Yes, positives time. But I'll just say I was a little bit heartbroken. Not even heartbroken is not quite the right word. I'm a bit flat about what we saw from Brandon Parfitt and
Yep.
Mitch Nevitt. Yeah, look,
Yeah.
Ollie Dempsey, I don't think had his best night, but Ollie Dempsey's also an outside player that relies on other people to win it at the source and get it out to him. I mean, even if we're not going to look at just individual performances, look at the fact that Geelong had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players have 7 or fewer disposals. Mitch Nevitt had 7 touches and played 70% of game time. Brandon Parfitt, 6 touches, 40% game time. Dempsey, 5 touches. Ollie Henry, 5 touches. Jeremy Cameron, 6 touches. Dempsey, Henry, and Cameron played 80, 80, and 100% game time, respectively. Ted Closey came on, had 6 touches in 24% game time, laid 3 tackles. Like,
He only kicked a goal.
there was, yeah, there was an issue there where a couple of guys were very well held or were players who maybe didn't get the ball they needed because maybe they were let down a bit on the inside at times. But then there's some guys who were probably expected to come in and play in the middle, who haven't quite got it done. So that's just, I'll just say that. We'll get into it more in the Patreon show, but I think it's okay to say that it was a bit disappointing. I'm still a believer that Mitch Nevitt is like a 2025 and beyond prospect if he's going to work out. I still don't think he's physically ready for it. I don't think he's big enough, strong enough, powerful enough yet. And some guys take a bit longer to develop. Zach Guthrie, a good example. But, you know, he had 7 touches for 44 meters gained, Mitch Nevitt, and Brandon Parford, who's a very experienced AFL player, 6 touches for 10 meters gained, 2 tackles and a clearance before being subbed out. It's not quite what you're after. I think someone made the good point that Jeremy Cameron had a frustrating night and you know, was often being held and sort of manhandled off the ball. But someone made the good point that, you know, Gary Ablett sometimes used to play with like 2 taggers on him. You've got, you know, sometimes you've also got to find a way. And so there were a few who had down nights. And I think that's okay to say that. They certainly won't be down forever, particularly like if you look at a Jeremy Cameron. But I think there's a couple of blokes who probably, it would surprise me very much if they weren't playing the majority of the rest of 2024 in the VFL, unless something miraculous happens form-wise. But that very well could happen. Let's talk some positives before we get into votes, Johnny. I'll let you, so what are some things that you liked or thought worked or made you feel a bit better about the night and the season and even the future moving forward?
Sean Manor was one that I really enjoyed watching. He put his best foot forward and didn't give up and showed why he got selected back in this team. And, you know, when a lot of other players around you that are a bit more experienced in the AFL game really flounder and don't step up when needed to, and he stood up for the entire game. He was trying his heart out in everything. I think he kicked a goal. He kicked a goal. No, he didn't kick a goal, but it got close a couple of times. Yeah, and I just thought his effort, his will to attack the ball constantly and throughout the entire game was really positive. And as I said, and that showed the reason why he got picked back up into this side. Like 19 disposals, 8 tackles, 8 clearances, 1 goal assist. Like that's a really good game by him, and he really stood up and cemented his spot yet again. And I'm really happy to see him thrive throughout his resurgence back to the team. SDK, that ruck work was really good. Basically, even hit outs with Tim English and the other Bulldogs tools did a really, really, really well. Good job and proving his athleticism, what he can do, and you know, also pretty good stats. He had 20 disposals, 3 marks, 3 tackles, 31 hit outs, 4 clearances, and a goal assist. So, what more? That's a pretty solid ruckman's game for his 4th, 5th game as a ruckman. So, that's another really good positive. And trying to think of a few others.
I'll just add
You
to
bad
what
one.
you were saying. Yeah, I'll just add to what you're saying about Manor. Something that I love is that he's actually now shown that he can be more than just a small pressure forward. Obviously, when he
Yes.
played for Werribee, he was having games where he was having like 35, 40 touches and kicking 4, 5, 6 goals. Like he was playing at stoppages. He was playing in the midfield for Werribee. So you started to see that in the last VFL game before he got bumped up. He had, I think it was 30 touches, 10 clearances, 6 goals, and 10 tackles or something like that. Like it was an insane game. Then he gets bumped up to the A team. Doesn't have a lot of touches, but lays the 14 tackles. And you just notice over the last few weeks, and then particularly on Saturday night, his presence at clearances, at stoppage situations. So he's showing he can be used in a variety of ways, which I think makes his position in the team very strong. Now, I know he had a low disposal efficiency, but that was the nature of the night. It was the nature of the Dogs' pressure, just trying to get it on your boot and get it away. And Sam De Koning, I think, is showing some really good signs. I think there's still work to be done in the ruck situation. And as I said, we'll talk about it on the Patreon when we chat more deeply about selection. But I didn't like when we had Rowan and Jeremy Cameron trying to ruck in our forward 50. That can't happen. That looked really, really poor. I thought that was. I was just kind of like at that stage going, what are we doing here? Like that's. But I thought he keeps competing. I love that it's getting him involved more in the game. You know, like the start of the year, he was sort of having those 10, 12 touches maybe down back. You're getting the ball in his hands 20 times. He's a dangerous player, and I think he's only going to develop. I was going to go with a really obvious one here, and I actually don't care about going. I'll go an obvious one and then one that I just is a bit of a favorite. Tom Stewart just gives me so much. I don't know. I guess I get a lot of joy out of watching Tom Stewart play football. I wish they'd just gone, we're just going to stick you in the middle for the full game. Like it was a bit cruel almost, where he'd go on ball, he'd win a bunch of stuff, win a bunch of clearances. He ends the night with a goal, 26 touches, 8 marks, 5 tackles, 7 clearances, nearly 600 meters gained. And it was almost teasing, they'd play him in the middle for a bit, then they'd bump him down back again. He's just amazing. We're so lucky to have him in the side. He's just a player I feel lucky to watch every week. And I think he'll be a massive leader for us for a long time. I still think he's the future captain once Dangerfield hangs it up. And the second guy I'll just talk about, and I've talked about him a lot if you're a Patreon subscriber, or you might have even heard me talk about it on the public show, but Ted Closey getting a go for a quarter. I think we probably pulled the lever on that a quarter too late. I probably would have broken that glass at halftime. But he comes on the last term, has 6 touches, 3 tackles, a clearance, 116 meters gain, nearly kicks his first goal. I thought even in terms of his disposal efficiency was, I think was 65%. That's about perfect for Ted Closey. I don't think you need him to be much more than that. But I was just really heartened, I guess, seeing him at the level again for only the second time in his career. He looks physically a bit more ready for it. And he's not going to be this explosive, speedy mid, but they don't all need to be. He's crafty enough and also just willing enough. He laid some, his tackles were crunching. So I like that. And players like him make me excited about the future of the team. I know Lawson Humphries didn't have his best night, but he also makes me excited for the future down at the Cattery. I think there's good days ahead, and perhaps a lot of them will happen over the next 8 weeks. We'll just have to wait and see, I suppose. Do you have any other ones that you want to talk about before we get to best on ground votes, Johnny?
I'm going to talk about Jack Henry. I know he copped a lot of flack by fans over the game. I thought he played well for the conditions. Like, he did everything he could, and it's an extremely difficult position to play defense, especially in the modern game with free kicks seemingly
On a
paid
night
for
like that.
not much, and on a night like that, like, he still put his best foot forward. He still played a really good game, I thought, and held his head high throughout the entire game. Like, he ended with let me just find him. Jack Henry, 11 disposals, 5 marks, 4 tackles. Like, as a defender, that's a pretty good night. Wet, wild weather, ball coming in as crazy as it was, but also the Dogs were kicking inside really well, and I still thought he handled himself well. I can't remember who his direct opponent was, but he had an opponent may have kicked a few goals, but he was fighting and doing his best he could. But it gets difficult when the ball goes in quickly and efficiently and effectively. Like, there's not much you can do if the ball is laced out to a player in front, or if they just out muscle you, or the ball's to their advantage. And I thought he battled on and didn't give up throughout the night. So he did well, and I don't get the hate he gets every single game.
And especially like the specifics of it. I think, there's times this year where the whole backline's played pretty average footy, but often that's come actually out of not getting adequate defensive support from the midfield. And if the Dogs midfield hadn't played so well, there might be being questions asked of their backline. You don't know how, each part of a team is going to look. If you take away a strength in another area, you just don't know how that group responds. So, I think the Dogs backline played extremely well. I was very impressed with the hands of Buku Karmas down back, but, Rory Lobb obviously as well, 14 intercept possessions. But, yeah, no, I'm with you. I think Jack Henry, unfortunately, has just drawn the short straw this year of being sort of scapegoated a lot. I don't think he's had his best season, but there's some areas where he's actually playing better than in the flag year. So it's just, I think there's always an unlucky player who cops the ire of fans more so than others. And I think it's easy for backmen to fall into that role because often they're the last player you see before an opposition goal sails through. It's worked its whole way. It's like when people, hate on goalkeepers in round ball football. And it's like, well, I had to get through 10 other guys. And that's not to say that defenders can't play badly or goalies can't play badly, but I don't know. I'm with you. I just don't think Jack Henry's been as appalling as other people do. I think, at times he's had a rough trot, but that's kind of indicative. His form and the way we think about him is probably indicative of this whole Cats team. There's been some ups. There's been some downs. There's been a little bit of everything in between.
Yep.
Let's do votes though, Johnny. I'll read Sambo's off first, then I'll flick to you to talk about yours. So we had
All right.
Sambo's got Sean Manor with the 1 vote, Mitch Duncan with the 2 votes. Mitch Duncan did crack in and have a go on a night that didn't probably suit his skill set. He really did have a crack. And Sam had Tom Stewart with the 3 votes. What did you go with, Johnny?
Let me bring my votes up. No, I know my votes. So I'm a 1 to SDK. Said what I had to say about him already. 2 to Sean Manor. Mentioned him as well. And I'm giving my 3 to the newest obvious choice, Tom Stewart, for another blistering game.
Love it, love it, love it. I have exactly the same votes as you do,
Nice.
John. I've got Sam de Koning with the 1, got Sean Manor with the 2, and I've got Tom Stewart with the 3. I thought on balance, those 3 players were consistently players, I guess, who did things that made me clap and say, oh, good effort, good contest, good kick, whatever it was. Those 3. Sam de Koning won 37.3% of his hitouts. That's 8% off what Tim English did, 3% off what Mark Blixarves did. But he had the second most hitouts to advantage on the ground. Sam de Koning, 7 behind Tim English's 11. And I think he was, all in all, pretty good. We've discussed Sean Manor at length and likewise Tom Stewart. So, yeah. Those are our votes. And that was our episode. This episode of the Chaps Chat Cats is now going to move over to the Patreon part of the show where we're going to talk. We're going to answer some listener questions, some viewer questions. They come in regards to selection. We'll be talking about the ruck situation more specifically, and also a more general question: where to from here? As we look ahead to the rest of the Cats season and what we think might unfold. If you want to get that part of the show, make sure you go on over and subscribe to the Hoops Crew on Patreon. Also, just a little tease for this week, Wednesday specifically. Keep your eyes peeled because our very own Paul James, that's right, Paul James, he of Nuff of the Week fame, amongst other things, is going to be putting out a Hoops Crew exclusive gameplay video of the footy game, Footy Bash. So if you're into footy, if you're into footy games, if you're into video games, make sure you keep your eyes peeled on, I'm assuming, the YouTube channel, the Hoops Crew, for that one, because it is going to be a ripper and it's going to be an exclusive bit of content for the Hoops Crew followers. All right. That's it. We're getting out of here. As usual, we're going to play you out with our very favorite four-legged friend. It is halftime here on the show. And so, of course, we say good evening to the halftime horse. Until next time, go Cats.
Go Cats.
You get your cordial, you get your lollies are a spray from the coach. Lollies, absolutely. So you get your cordial, you get your lollies are a spray from the coach. Lollies, absolutely.
That's what halftime's about.